You have probably heard people use the phrase spirit-led. That's a spirit-led church, a spirit-led person. But where does the Spirit lead us? Today is the first Sunday in the season of Lent. On Wednesday evening, we observed Ash Wednesday, Lent's beginning. It's a day on which we say out loud that we are human and finite and not invincible. For if we don't acknowledge that truth, then how can we ask for God's help? And how can we forgive ourselves for our limitations and love others and ourselves honestly, not for who we might be, but for who we are today? This prayer by Jan Richardson helps us to hear the meaning of Ash Wednesday in a new way. All those days you felt like dust, like dirt, as if all you had to do was turn your face toward the wind and be scattered to the four corners or swept away by the smallest breath as insubstantial. Did you not know what the Holy One can do with dust? This is the day we freely say we are scorched. This is the hour we are marked by what has made it through the burning. This is the moment we ask for the blessing that lives within the ancient ashes, that makes its home inside the soil of this sacred earth. So let us be marked not for sorrow, and let us be marked not for shame. Let us be marked not for false humility or for thinking we are less than we are, but for claiming what God can do within the dust, within the dirt, within the stuff of which the world is made, and the stars that blaze in our bones, and the galaxies that spiral inside the smudge we bear. The season of Lent marks the 40 days, as I shared with the children, that Jesus spent in the wilderness before he began his ministry, and it prepares us to celebrate Easter. It's a time for spiritual reflection and sharpening so that Easter becomes more meaningful, and it goes back to the ancient church's preparation for baptism. How might we use these 6 weeks to let go of things that harm us? Or make time for the drinking of wisdom that we talked about last Sunday? Just asking ourselves this question: is there something in my life that if I let it go would make more space for light and peace? And is there something that if I added it in my life would let light and peace flow in? In the Gospel of Mark, we find the shortest account of Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness. Mark writes that after Jesus' baptism, the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. Matthew and Luke give us a more gentle picture, saying that Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness. But in Mark's gospel, there's this intensity. Jesus is driven there. That Greek word could even be translated thrown. Jesus was cast into the wilderness. If we pause and picture what that would have looked like, we envision Jesus focused and determined as if he was pursued, single-mindedly rushing away from the Jordan River into the deepest isolation, the sense that he must go. In the book of Acts, there's a story we heard, and it has an intriguing echo, a baptism immediately followed by the Spirit's intense direction. Philip was a deacon of the early church, and he was scattered along with others when Saul was persecuting the first Christians. And as Philip was scattered, he preached. God sent Philip to a wilderness road heading toward Gaza, new meaning as we hear it these days. And there Philip met an Ethiopian court official who had been to Jerusalem to worship. We don't know his name. And this Ethiopian official was reading the scroll of Isaiah in his chariot on his journey home. And Philip spoke with him, and they talked about the scripture. And after some time, this important man asked if he could be baptized. We read next that Philip said yes. And as they came out of the water, the Spirit snatched Philip away, taking him to his next mission. Who is this Spirit? Who is this Spirit that drives and snatches? The Spirit, that word, is how we name God's unseen presence in our lives. When we know that God is there, but we don't see. It's how we talk about the way in which God is here, leading, empowering, working among us, giving us courage to live like Jesus and seek the well-being of others. The Ethiopian court official was a Gentile and a eunuch, and from another continent, marks of exclusion from the early church. And yet the Spirit sought him out. In the book of Acts, as the early church begins to take form, the Spirit is an opening force, opening the church up, widening the welcome, removing barriers that separated people from one another, taking down walls and including. And the church was caught by surprise. They were trying to catch up to where God already was, but they were unsure. They were slowed down by trying to keep up a perimeter and a sense of identity and create policies that made sense. The church builds up its blocks just in time for the Spirit to burst through them, knocking their tower down. This is not unlike my experience of the church today and of myself. We want to be the hands and the feet of Jesus, but we find ourselves 10 steps behind, or 100 or 1,000 steps behind. We trip along trying to keep up with God, trying to keep up with God's work and God's welcome, with God's compassion and justice and love. But we need help. We need God's help. Sometimes we need the Spirit to snatch us, maybe to drive us a little bit. After church today, after we eat a delicious dinner made by your hands, as we join together in our annual meeting, we'll reflect upon the life of Community Church in the last year, what God has done in and through this community made of people. And so also today, I want us to begin to look forward to the next year. What will we say in February of 2025? Where will we have been? Where is the Spirit sending us, leading us, driving us? Did your mother ever shoo you out of the house? Shoo! Go play, especially out of the kitchen. It's beautiful outside. When our eldest son, William, was a teenager, we had a rule. No homework, nothing could be done until he played outside for at least 30 minutes. If he went right into homework, he was grumpy and miserable. And he would trudge outside, right? But once he got started, he'd be out there for 2 hours. 30 minutes, we said, but he would get caught up. Shoo, get out of the house. What we do in here is vital. We build a strong community, we find healing, we deepen faith and understanding, we grow friendships that lead into real care for one another. Charles Moore, the editor of the book we're reading in our adult ed series, wrote this: "This is our mission, to demonstrate how steady, simple, fruitful relationships based on mutual service are the most powerful healing force there is in the world." What we do in here is vital. We seek to create sanctuary, a refuge for all people, a place to encounter God's grace, a place of peace and joy and hope. But the Spirit also shoos us out of the house sometimes. This year, we're seeking ways to go out into our community. Starting in a couple of weeks, our community care coordinator and office administrator, Taisha Thompson, and I will be co-leading a women's empowerment group at Macaulay Village. We'll be meeting there every other Thursday. Soon, we'll be inviting you to join with us in meal preparation at Amos House. For Vacation Bible School this year, instead of being in here, we're going to be out there. We're going to have a kids' week at a park down the street. Where else might this expansive Spirit lead us? We'll wait and we'll watch with bated breath. I'm excited for the ways that we can show our neighbors that love that Jesus showed, and in the doing, we will surely find ourselves shaped anew by every person we meet.